I just heard this song from Gary Valenciano, Could You Be Messiah to Me? I was listening to it, and what I realized was that every time I would hold in my mind the story that the culture that this song came out of, the Philippines in 1995, the main city, the urban, anyways, the culture that it came out of, very, very Christian, and I dipped into their worldview and could see, because I wasn't raised Christian, I was raised atheist. So I just learned about Christianity from school and from others. Um, and so I got an idea of, because it's very different in Germany, the Christian spirit or culture and mindset, very, very different from in the Philippines. And so I was listening to the song from that mindset. The Messiah is Jesus, and then the whole story and how Jesus is the Savior. And also the song is Could You Be Messiah to Me? And can you save me? It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song. Can you save me? Can you be my father? Can you be my mother? Can you be my sister? Can you be my brother? Everything that we could, that we want, or that we could ever imagine that we wanted. Can you be my provider? Can you be my lover? I think he sings that too. I don't think he sings lover. Probably that, I don't know. No, probably not, because that wouldn't fit into that mindset, right? So, but everything that we equate love with, and safety, and salvation, all of that, because the song is coming from a lot of suffering. That's what that song is like, the medicine for. And so I was listening to it after many, many years, and so I was aware of that. Oh yeah, that's how I see it. But the way that I dipped into it, the way that I started it, was just listening to the song. That awareness of this other perspective that I got to get to know, that came later. And so what I noticed was, if I just listened to the song without that story, Could You Be Messiah to Me, then then it had this whole other feeling. It had it wasn't sad at all. It wasn't sad at all, and a little bit, because it goes into emotionality. But I also was interested, because now I understood what Messiah is, which I didn't back then. And the Messiah, so it has to do, as I mentioned several times, with the Christ. And the Christ is the light body at a certain maturity, at a certain evolutionary stage within the dimensions of our existence. And in this universe, it's 15 dimensions. And the Christ, so we all have this physical body, and we have a soul, and our soul is a light body, and the light body extends. If you can see it, this is the aura. The light body is much bigger than the denser physical body, and the light body is the body of the soul. And the way it connects into the physical body is in the heart. And I don't know if the third eye, the pineal gland, if it's just like coming from the heart into the pineal gland, or if the soul like goes into the heart and then spreads throughout the body, and then shines also into or through. There's also a chakra point, because it's like at the eye of the tornado of the chakra in the center of your spine. There's that portal. These are all portals where the light can shine through. The light of the soul actually can shine through and can be seen. It has been seen by many people who can see auras, but also by painters of the old ages. That was the halo. And they wouldn't paint the halo unless they would either see it or they would believe someone who said they saw it. Something like that. So it's a maturing light body, and the light body holds all of this information, and it is being fed from the soul. It is the body of the soul, exactly. And when the light body has a certain maturity, and you know the way that the energy flows is toroidal. It's a toroidal field, our energy field. And within the toroidal field, and this is also very interesting, this is Nassim Harameyn's work. And he says, and now I don't exactly understand how this works yet, because when we see a planet, you know, it's got this apple shape. I mean, it looks like a sphere, but really it's more a little bit of an apple shape because it has this huge opening on the top and on the bottom. That's what a torus looks. Look at it. We're going to look at pictures soon. I'm going to get all the pictures together. That's what a torus looks like. So that's how the energy bodies work. Yes. And as I also mentioned in the other video, is that I'm not sure, but I believe that Nassim Haramein said that our planet, was it the planet? I think the planet, he showed the toroidal field of the planet, and it was a double toroidal field. So even a double toroidal field could even have the form of a planet. It could look like our planet and still be a double toroidal field. And there's this thing of two toruses pressed on top of each other. One is up, one is down, or one is left, one is right, whichever perspective you look at it from. And it's also one is male, one is female, one is magnetic, one is electric, I guess. I'm not sure about that, but one repels, one attracts. Just like, you know, on top of the globe, when there's summer on top of the globe, there's winter on the bottom. And so maybe they switch also, you know, maybe that has to do with the pole switch, because the poles, they do wobble and they do switch around too. Which means that the star tetrahedron, Nassim Haramein says and also shows that inside of a torus field, toroidal field, there's a star tetrahedron, which is the light body of every living being has that. And I guess at a certain, well, he says all planets have this star tetrahedron inside. And I also believe he says that it's the building block, basically. That's the building block of, you know, every atom looks like that. It's the building, it's like quantum physics. So you have I already said an atom is a toroidal field, is a torus, an atom. And so you would have, inside of that atom, you would have the star tetrahedron, which is a three-dimensional triangle. I think it's called tetrahedron, exactly. Three-dimensional triangle is a tetrahedron. So you have one on top and you have one on the bottom, tetrahedron. And then you don't go, because then you would have a diamond. You don't go exactly on top like this. You swivel it a little bit, like the Star of David in 2D, you know, in 3D, so that they're like this, and it creates a star, and then they are shoved into each other a little bit so that they share the middle, yeah, and the top part spins in one direction and the bottom part spins in the other direction. Levitational, gravitational forces, you know, they open up this field and they make this time-space reality of ourselves available. That's the mechanics of the light body. The light body is full of codes. It's like a key also, a key to the time-space vantage point, and how this time-space vantage point, in which dimension it is being perceived. Yeah, in which dimension it's being perceived, exactly. And it has to do with the spins. So it has to do with the spins of the atoms. The spins of the atoms. Is that right? When they're Christ-like, so the atoms that make up the light body, the Christ. Well, no, the Christ, hold on. The light body, the star tetrahedron light body is called Merkaba. And the Christ is when the Merkaba spins at a certain velocity, top and bottom. And I think I know the numbers, but I don't want to give false numbers, and it's not the point right now to give the numbers. This is just about the principle, and I've already given the numbers and I will again, So it's when every atom in the Merkaba is vibrating or is spinning. So it's electron around atomic core, or electron around nucleus. I think nucleus is the atomic core. So electron around nucleus, how fast does it spin? That defines or determines the dimension, the frequency, the hertz, can be also measured in hertz, that this atom, and that the atoms that are making up the Merkaba, when they spin at that specific speed, then specific top, specific bottom speed, then they have reached, then it's like a key that is unlocked, and there's like this not quantumly but threshold that at some point something is unlocked with this kind of speed and this kind of relation of speed. And there of course has to be a high level of coherence in order for not to get scrambled at that speed, and that's why the maturity of the light body is the maturity of the soul. And the maturity of the soul is conscious. How conscious can a soul be of its true self, of its nature, in ever denser form, in this density? That's really like the very, very archetypical, one of the totally archetypical stories. I was talking about the song, right? So, yeah, that's what Christ is, and when the Christ, so which means when the Christ is born, what does that mean? Is that you overstepped, you ascended, your consciousness has become expanded, self-knowing, self-aware to that degree. But also your heart has opened to that degree and allowed the soul, the light of who you are, the light of the soul to flow through into these channels, into these it's the chakra, it's the hearts of the chakras. It's like the eye of the storm of each chakra. And the top chakra is the crown, it spins like this, and it's the light coming in from the top. That's the outside light. But so the heart flows into this column and into all of the chakras and out the crown chakra, and that's also a way of communicating. I mean, this is a way of communicating. It's not just communication, it's the energy flow in and out from the soul body into the physical body. And on the physical aspect, those are the fluids, the two different kinds of fluids flowing in two different kinds of directions in our spine. So those are there are some requirements or some, what creates the Christ, and when that's, by the way, that's the Messiah, because when we have evolved, when we are to that degree aware that, I don't know what that would be an experiential value of someone who has a Christ. I mean, how do you even know how far along your Merkaba is? I don't know. I just know what it means, why they called him Jesus Christ, why they called him the Christ. And now I also know what Messiah is, because I've gained this part of the story, And then listening to the song, it wasn't heavy and sad anymore. It was beautiful. It was like just expansive, and then remembering the way. I mean, I was never able to really look at it. I never was able to look at it, believe what they believed, but I was able to look through like their glasses and say, oh, this is what they believe. Oh, okay, this is what they believe. I can't believe it because, my perspective has just been so much wider, from where I came from. So the Messiah is because when the Christ is born, when the Merkaba has reached this maturation state where codes click, and things start to open, and it's passing a threshold. And what it does, I mean, what do we need it for anyway? It is like a key. It is our vehicle of navigation in the universe. And when it's also the vehicle that makes this body possible, It's just part of the body. But it's also, at some point, you get a vehicle. I don't know if you always have a vehicle, or I guess you always have a vehicle, but, it's not as... it's not as refined, not as evolved. It has a limited time space. This is what it's about for the vehicle. It has a limited time space access. So the higher technology, so to speak, your vehicle is, your light body is, the more the soul then also is, because it equates with the maturity of the consciousness of the soul. So then the maturity of this soul, it grew, the soul took many lives in a certain sector of the universe, and it took so and so many lives, and now it's like coming to the point where it's like, okay, I think I'm ready for something new. And then it takes a vehicle. It takes this a certain maturity of the light body, but of the Merkaba, because the light body is more than the Merkaba. The Merkaba is a part of the light body. It's like, I wouldn't call it mechanical or technological, because it's nothing man-made. It's definitely divine and alive. I would say it's an energy stream, and I don't know at which density you can see it. But that's what I would say. It's a natural energy stream, even though straight lines don't exist in nature, which is really interesting. But I'm not going to go down that road now. Okay. Vehicle, exactly. And the way we get from one sector of the universe to the next sector is basically, as a soul, after death, you have your time of healing, your time of life review, your time of reconciliation, if there is any necessary reconciliation, your time of rest, your time of just, kind of not procrastinating, but just kind of like letting it all be, taking a vacation from this incarnation thing, just really being a soul and taking a vacation until the soul gets really itchy and says, hey, you know what, I really want to incarnate again. And maybe some people are very quick. Yeah, I'm not saying every soul needs this much time off. I'm not saying that. However, what the Merkaba does is, if the soul decides, okay, I want to go into that sector of the universe. I really want to have whatever I want to learn and experience, I want to do it there. And to get there, what a soul needs, I know this exists, I know this is true, but I don't exactly know now about densities or dimensions and, all these different, how we have the different density or different densities and different dimensions, 3 dimensions to 1 density. Yeah. But even a dimension is for us a threshold. Huge threshold, by the way, huge. We are currently experiencing the whole planet going from 3D to 5D, which means that, it's just a huge bandwidth that is being traversed. And it's not like, even though the whole planet is going through it, because of this also has to do with the position of the planet in the Milky Way galaxy right now, like that threshold. Why, up until this threshold, like let's say 2012, the hertz, which is the frequency of hertz, but no, wait a minute. The Schumann frequency is the heartbeat of the planet, and the planet has a heart, just like every other being has a heart, and every heart is a portal to pure light, to God. And that's what suns are. They are hearts. They are portals to pure light. Schumann frequency exactly is the heartbeat of the planet, and the heartbeat of the planet has been, I don't know for how long they were able to trace it back and then see how the heartbeat of the planet has been, like an EKG of the planet's heart, for I don't know how many years back. But the increase of the heartbeat went ever so gradual. And then at some point I heard 1986. That's just a year that comes up for me, like around 84, 86, something happened. Even though there are always these phases and thresholds where, quantum leaps happen, something that changes so much, 86, 84, what happened was the heartbeat just started going increasing exponentially. And exponentially it goes very, very quick. It goes, that's what exponentially is. At some point it's 100%. It's full throttle, it's maximum speed, It's kind of like that moment where in Star Wars where the ship goes, like that, and it goes into a different dimension because that's tipping over of the threshold, Schumann frequency, Stargate. Yes. So if the soul would want to have an incarnation in a different sector of the universe, it would have to go through the eye of the sun. I don't know if it could also go through the eye of the heart of the earth, maybe, because it's also a sun. It's just a different sun, just like a different star, I think so, because I know that also our hearts are portals. But I don't think I want to tell that story now. And I might have already told it. Yeah, I don't know which language, but yeah, so what's the Christ? The Christ is that you can do that. And I don't even know if the Christ is even more, that you can go to, a different universe. I mean, maybe there's like also, okay, your Merkaba is like this, so you can't go to that sector. You only have this limited option. Because it has to do with whether it makes any sense dimensionally for your soul to go someplace. And, it always has to do with you have to continue on the dimension that your last life, your last incarnation was in. You cannot skip dimensions. You can skip time, you can skip places, you can skip time and places as a soul. But also that needs keys. Also that needs, a certain maturity. Because it might be too confusing to have had a life, in nowadays, and then the next life you choose in the Middle Ages. It might be like, you're being a little hard on yourself. Why don't you go a little easier first, go maybe 100 years back first, or something like that, something like that, and when the Christ is a vehicle, is a light body that is so highly developed that it can, it goes into a much higher dimension than this one. And it can go through the sun. See, the thing is, the souls that cannot go through a sun, that's the thing. The souls that cannot, where their Merkaba isn't spinning at that particular spin, like the Christ, they have to reincarnate. They have to come back because they can't go through a portal. I don't know if they can use, because there's many different kinds of portals. Like every chakra is a portal, and across the earth they have a lot of star system portals or star portals that service certain star systems, so that anyone who dies and would want to go back to that star system somehow would have to get through this. The soul would have to get through through that particular star gate around the planet. But again, the Stargate needs to work, number one. And number two, you have to have the codes so that you don't get scrambled. You have to be an energetic match for that Stargate. So your Merkaba has to spin so that the mechanics fit, So I think that makes it pretty clear. But if you don't have, maybe already under the Christ, you can go to a different planet. Now, here's also the thing. There's also different, on the different dimensions, there is life on our planets because, I can't really, that's a belief I have. I can't really at this point prove it. I have evidence enough that for me it's clear and also makes perfect sense. But so why is it the Messiah? Because it's this wanting relief, wanting this to end this suffering, this always coming back, so many lives. I mean, that's not where the song is coming from, but it is coming from a lot of suffering. And if the soul starts to suffer because it's just not, somehow it's not able to grow enough their light body to create this Christ. But the thing is, I believe the Christ, Merkaba, you can definitely go through the sun. But then there's also a smaller version. There's a smaller Merkaba where you can incarnate as a soul on other planets of the solar system. Yeah, and then there's, I guess, an even smaller version of the... smaller version means it's just a different spin, maybe a slower spin, and maybe not the exact relationship between the spins. They could also be a little bit different. And so a slower spinning Merkaba, less aged soul, a younger soul, with less lives, with less experience, and with less light then, because we always grow, and the heart opens, consciousness opens, more light, greater light bodies. So they say he was the Son of God, and he said that. And by the way, in his Aramaic dialect, father, that which is translated as father, could also mean breath. I remember that. And then there's something else it could also mean, but there was also the word breath, the same word. He was definitely he had the Christ. He was so evolved that he had the Christ that he could change. He could easily go to a different sector of the universe. However, because of his love for the people, because of his love for the planet and the people, mostly I would think the people, he could see that if he would come back and not go to a different sector, he would come back into the flesh, so into this density, even though he was already so super evolved. It's possible to incarnate if the light body of the parents can hold the light of the child to come through, and it's possible to incarnate. I know it's possible to incarnate as far as a rishi, and so Avatar, if rishis are incarnate on this planet, not many maybe, but there at least is one, and I think there's a couple, several. So Avatar, I saw one myself, and there are avatars incarnate. So then there are probably also people, we just don't have a name for it, that are oversouls in one body, or that is an oversoul in one body and completely conscious of its other bodies. Maybe it works that way, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works yet. Yes, and he decided, Jesus, I don't know if he was a rishi or an avatar, but at least he was an avatar, if not a rishi. And rishi goes up to, I think, it's not 15th not 15th dimension. It goes up, I think, till 12th dimension. Rishi is 12th dimension. And then beyond that is non-physical. But I mean, it could be in a physical body. I don't know. Maybe Rishi is up to 15. I'm not sure. Because anyways, it goes all the way when the mind is completely still. Completely still. But maybe that's also what the dimensions are. Is that if my mind now is completely still, it's like open. It's like almost not there. It's just basically not there. It's just seeing. It's just the experience and no story. And maybe because of my mind, the way it's my light body, my soul's body, and my physical body and my mind, the way it's configured and the density of it when it's completely open is not the same like when a rishi is completely open. And because you would think if it's open, it's open. It can always go all the way back to God, all the way back to the one. Yeah. I think so. I do believe that. I believe that the one is in any moment it could take anyone back. The light, all that what I call God. The consciousness that everything is. It has to be conscious. And I don't know if it's conscious of itself, but it has to be absolutely conscious, which means conscious of everything, all the stories, everything, even the stories, every feeling, every thought, everywhere in the universe, at every time, and at the same time, the experience of no time, no space, no thought, no, and yet there's always existence, because how can there be not existence? How can there be not existence? How would you know? How would you know if you didn't exist, that there was not existence? Only existence can know not existence. And, electricity or energy never dissolves. It dissolves, it dissipates, but it never annihilates. It never, the only thing that, it does annihilate, because there is the big void, there's all, pure light, all the silence, pure consciousness, all of that, there is that, at the singularity, at the heart of all hearts, there is that, at the heart of all hearts, and every single heart is connected to that. And so, this could, at any time, take a person back and say, "Oh, stop this! This person's suffering." It's like this tip of my finger thinks it thinks it's this tip of the finger. It doesn't know about the body. It doesn't know about the truth of what it is, and it's really hurting. And when it really hurts, at some point, you're like, okay. You're mine, and it feels good again, However, of course, that doesn't happen very often, because the souls want to have that experience. It's like the souls want to, as long as they still get something out of it, it's their choice. But let's not go into that, because I want to get back to the Messiah. So souls that have been reincarnating and they haven't been able to build this Merkaba light body, and they've already been here for so many lifetimes. In the Dark Ages, it's more difficult to build your light body. It's more difficult to remain conscious, because there's so much fear. Just a lot of fear. And not only that, also has to do with the heartbeat of the earth, with the hertz, the heartbeat of the earth has to do with the consciousness of the earth, has to do with where the earth is in its orbit. You know, what the space-time vantage point of Earth and of the solar system is a big factor. It has, makes a huge difference. So, so at some point a soul can get tired, and when the soul starts suffering, that's a human being also. I don't know if that the human being would suffer too. And there's another part of the story to it, which is I'll tell you later. So, thinking about that, of course, the Messiah is my own evolution. The Messiah is my own recognition. And there is a time where your own recognition, the recognition of your soul, the recognition of who you are, of the life that is here, where that is supported. And then there are times where that's suppressed, and that has to do with how much light is in the sector of the universe that the solar system is currently moving through. And we are right now in the photon band of the Milky Way. So it's like a lot of light for, I think, about 2,000 years. We're in this super light, and we're getting, we're waking up, and then our souls, it's going much faster now that we can grow our Merkaba to the speed of Christ. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's possible for me in this lifetime, but I definitely believe it's possible. I mean, why not? And if not, I don't care. Because what I know is that it is growing, and I'm not afraid of another lifetime on Earth. That's fine with me. I don't feel desperate to leave Earth or to leave this solar system, so it's fine with me, and as long as I enjoy my experience, I don't need a Christ, but that is where everything is leading. It's just a threshold, and that goes much faster now. And so someone who is in deep suffering, he's like saying, can you be that for me, And of course, who could he call to? Than to himself? Can you be that for me? Can I be that for me? Can I save myself? Do I have that? Can I be this loving can I love myself? Can I have mercy on myself? Can I be the salvation? And because the Messiah is like the one who comes and brings salvation to the people. And he's like rescuing his people. That's why it's called also, it's not rescued. What do they say in the born again Christian church? They say born again, saved. Exactly, saved. Yes, saved from hell. It's like that. So something comes and saves from hell. Well, light comes, and when we realize this, when we understand this story, then when we sing this song, we also understand it's us. It's us, like us we've been waiting for. It's only we can save ourselves. Only we can save ourselves. And now we're moving into the other part of the story, which is that's what Jesus said. Jesus always said, kingdom of heaven is within you, and the Father is within you. He was a portal. He was a bright light, and he brought a lot of healing and love, and he came out of mercy. He came out of love. He came out of compassion, and that's what they call bodhisattva in the Tibetan tradition. it's a known, it's known that there are beings, they could go somewhere else, but they choose not to, because they, out of love and compassion. Everything he did, nothing was for his own gain. It was all out of love. But he never said, he never said anything about only through me. Only through me, no. Only through the Christ, yes, of course. Only through the, through your light body can you get liberated out of the ongoing cycle of reincarnation on this planet, and maybe even in a similar surrounding on the planet. But also it was the very direct suffering of the people that he loved so much, and through his teachings, it uplifted them because he was speaking the truth. It resonated with them, and he was speaking out of his own experience, and he was telling them the truth about you are your own saviors. He was telling them the truth about their light, their soul, their light bodies, their Merkaba, and how they can, make it grow, how they can feel better, basically, how they can get out of this, because suffering is in the mind. It's a mindset. It's a perspective you look things at. I mean, okay, you can say if you're on the stretcher somewhere or being tortured, obviously it's not a mind thing anymore, even though that's also a mind thing. But, there's no way you could meditate your way out of that. It's like a deeper part of that. That's a very, very expanded part of the mind that could not be affected by such pain, physical pain. So then when I was listening to the song and I looked out at, and I listened to it out of that old perspective of the way they used to see it, like all that yearning, all that love, all that hope and all that suffering, all projected onto this one being, Jesus Christ. The Yeshua, who lived and all projected from so many people onto this one being, and it seemed so tight and so limited, and it seemed so dependent, which it is. It does. It creates this huge feeling of I can do nothing, I am powerless, I'm completely dependent on this one being, Jesus, to save me, and by that, it's like all the truth is not seen, the truth is just simply not seen. If you always look away from yourself, and when the answer and the key and that what everything you're yearning for, you could never ever, Jesus did his best, and he still is, but this that you so yearn for cannot come through him if you have not recognized it yourself yet, because how would you recognize it? You see, how would you otherwise be able to recognize it? Yeah. And so it was difficult for me to imagine for a longer time through this perspective, because it was very, very tight and didn't feel good, and it's just, well, that's the thing. That's why it didn't feel good, because there is an agenda. There is a reason why Jesus Christ was not, his teachings were not truly, in their true meaning, they were not understood, but they were also not open-minded enough to want to understand his teachings in the true meaning, because there was an agenda behind it, because he was so powerful. I mean, what an impression he made on humanity, and so they had to use his legacy, because his legacy was, that's what he was all about: liberating people, that they could see the truth of who they are, and then they would wake up, and they could take their own fate and their own happiness into their own hands, because they would recognize who they truly are and what they came for, and they would be powerful, they would be happy, they would be relaxed. And you can only control people with fear, and you can only control a larger amount of people than your own fraction if they're more afraid than you. Like, if you tell them lies, you have to tell them lies. But when, what Jesus was about was that he brought consciousness forth. His light resonated with all the other lights, with all the other souls, because they saw him and they couldn't but love him. Their hearts would open. They saw the truth, and you can only see the truth in someone else when you see it in yourself. And that's when the heart opens. And I'm not saying it stays open like that, because, I guess, I don't know, I guess it's possible to, when you recognize it once, to keep it, but it's also possible to lose it again, even when you've seen it. So he was all about liberation, and these people could then, not be subdued, not be exploited, not be controlled by the controlling elites, which already was back then, That's clear. And so they had to change his story into a controllable story, into a story actually that would serve them. They just turned it around. And they made him, they changed his teachings, they made differences in the translation. Sometimes it's just a little difference, like the joke with the monk. Sometimes it's just a little difference that can make a huge difference in and the meaning of words, how they change and so forth, And so what they did is they took this power that the love of this being had unleashed, and they made a religion out of it. And they said that they did not continue the pure teachings of Jesus. They changed them. And now he is not a portal to God and telling every single being, you are a portal to God. The portal to God is through your heart, through your soul, That's what, he was telling the truth, because it's not the truth that he's the only portal and, yes, he's a much, 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 much brighter light, an older soul, for sure, much, much expanded consciousness, much, much more awareness of a much deeper existence, and this awareness of all that is coming through, streaming through, in this huge open heart. However, he would never, ever want anyone to think, to believe that he was their Savior. Because that's not how it works. And what would he have gained out of it? He wanted to liberate the people. He wanted, and healing is when a person realizes that everything painful it thought about the situation that caused the illness or that caused the accident was a misinterpretation. And this can be conscious, this can happen on an unconscious or on a subconscious level, but healing is essentially seeing the truth. And we cannot oftentimes, at a certain amount of trauma and at a certain depth, we cannot see the truth as a story. It's not a story anymore, it's just a feeling. And all we can do is feel it. And of course, as the souls, we're multidimensional. So your higher dimensional body that expands and connects with other, builds collectives with other light bodies, and we're all connected, and you are all one big body, like one big system. You could call a system body too. And I was just stopped. I guess it was about that. If we would see the truth about this story of Jesus, we would see the truth of Jesus, our hearts would just be able to expand. It doesn't mean that our love for this being diminishes one bit when we see the truth of who we are and see what it is that he wanted us to, why he came, what he was showing us, his teaching,